Topics in the news, topics in the news, topics in the news, boxing, powerful things are truths that are true, no lot, well, truth, some natures of truth. There is a nature of truth that is true always, not denying the slightest exceptions. The slightest exception nature involved, relevant, not valuing not having to deny. All lied to only lied. Other was communicated for our founders. Then they asked to be communicated for them. Forgiveness is not to give up, but to blame a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise and or a breaching method, singular. Therefore, the needs to discern syntactically and blame a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise and or the negative value nature progression itself, having entertained criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and identity treatments since ancient times. Prepare our minds. See, black people, not you, Jim Jordan and Yuan /S. In other words, I tell best vaccines, but in other words, people, for example, interbranch. These are three identities, distinct sequence / simultaneous nature. Where and how all identity of the ground locations, names, therefore, where identity, how identity works. It is in and where and how that identity of hyper-simultaneous that is in demonstration to us of itself scientifically, for example, per where and per how. We are the manifest electrical engineering of ourselves works, being individual, the volume science rather. Therefore, in other words, the electrical engineering, the sciences share an identity where they appear not till a special difference is relevant. Earth's a special difference. Where and how we share going to outer space self-value is relevant to where and to how self-value rolls with the crazy breaching methods laws entrenched north and south colonies of that is now not and still entrenched north and southern states. Not just slavery, sickly distinctly against every colonist, then forced to be citizen, forced to free themselves, counterforced, but they could only semi-counter-extort that which the roles and the relevance of the nature of law where and how had been employed by a preaching method off the records per uses of the definition of the word employment. While everyone was logic, identity, there were styles and identities of logic that were and still are blaming other things, others, ourselves, rather than the preaching method, blaming them exactly the way the preaching method wanted. It needs these things blamed. And nature continually and increasingly demonstrates it was and is increasingly valuable to add to answers. It comes with, so in other words, Jim Jordan, WFSB colluded with people that were a certain type of victim / hyper victim that were shown needs means to hide simultaneously, preemptively, actively at the time, and increasingly, life progressions and illusions and uses of them as roles with tactically, criminally foreign influence uses of all locations for a method that sustained all, even if witch trials were completely made up, and or if they were, they were involved with, what they were involved with requires, but all kinds of questions, all the questions with American history involved. They involved with this breaching method. That was laws that were the complete syntactical possession of everyone, slash hypersyntactical. So Jim Jordan, for example, they have you as a victim slash hyper victim. And where now they have these fake sides. This is relevant for, in other words, I lost my train of thought, but they're lying to you. Offensively, in each age and nature of have been roles with illusion stacking into databases with adults and kids, and relevant to where and to how there is actually properly to address overt simultaneously slash insidious worse than criminal incompetence with the subject's treatments with each of the sciences, with the identity treatments of the sciences. The sciences share an identity vaccines. Not they share an identity where they appear not to too. It's where and how nature is demonstrating how it uses exception nature distinctly from ourselves, distinctly from our programs, uses it. There is only one identity that really is what really happened in the past, in the value of that. So, where to observe and how to observe this breaching method involves understanding what was true always, not denying any exceptions, not valuing them being or having been denied. What was slavery about, for example? Simultaneously with the witch trials, all the things we know that simultaneously, or that were told, just the fact that they were told, and while other was not told. I've never heard anyone use what nature tells us to bring to this conversation, which is the fact that we have black pupils, white divides, and exception nature. Where and how nature uses again exception nature distinctly from ourselves and from our programs. And this breaching method that our founders left us, our founders who had to counter extort the other founders. Again, could only semi-counter extort the other founders. Why would they have to semi-counter extort the other founders? We know they had to semi-counter extort the other founders because the laws were about what people, how they could make positive and negative treatments. They had to use and or entertain criminal insidiousness of positive natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and or name treatments simultaneously. And where and how that is being and having it is being. All right, hold on. Microphone sensitivity. Testing 1, 2. So we are in a semi-ancient trial, and negotiations. The importance for negotiations for regarding what to do, where, and how we have the phenomenon of technology in the hands of a negative identity, of negative value, nature progression, self-value, and being having been used remotely. To understand, we have to understand it from the base of itself, not just from some ancient times. Colonies, colonial names, individually grouped and together, that were already being used as victims slash hyper victims that were increasingly having to blame other things, others, or ourselves. where it employed things that the, the ancients and the semi-ancients, before most of, to an extent, they remember nature would demonstrate them to. Nature employed each age of fact-keeping nature to pay attention to certain things distinctly, I mean, distinct, distinctly from how we have them now, simply distinctly brought and presented theory and with tactical physical delusions at each age and nature of campus. For the systems where we have experts been employed, where and how that was only known at, where and how we have arrays, the same way computer systems use arrays and lists and exception nature, they are using memory relative to identity, relative to the identity of value/value progression that they are a mimic of, including where and how the Constitution unabridged is a hyper additional might/power by that, but instead stayed employed slash hyper employed by a breaching method. And see, and that measures and maintains where and how subjects treatments, qualities of fact treatment nature, quality of fact treatment nature, aspects of fact treatment nature, relative to criminal insidiousness, relative to disemployed all identities of fact treatment nature, sophistication, collusion/S, incapable of admitting that and uses of it discernible, but only to an extent, where simultaneously also discernible is where and how everyone else was blaming other things, others or something, everyone else is manifest fact-keeping nature styles, natures, identities of value, progression, timing of hearing people's names. There was a girl named Crystal. I never had the pleasure of a conversation with her at one time in my life, who's one of the quote black themed quote, or black kids when I was a kid. Now an adult. God bless. I hope you're doing fine if you hear this, Crystal. But one time when you walked by me, the only time ever. See, we're hearing people's names from others. They're making truths where truths are used for lies. And where truths are used where lies are parked between them, where those lies are fact-keeping nature-oriented predicate acts, which is distinct from where and how someone tells a lie or a truth. And where and how people are pretending passions and emotions about who's a liar or who's a truth teller. They are simultaneously defending, like they can't, consciously people know if you examine their logic that they're leaving out simultaneously what they are actually capable of discerning. And at each age of fact-keeping nature, because this is relevant. They even have medical and fire campuses and military campuses. They have all identities of sophistication/non-sophistication and counters to that as collusions. Exceptions, the exception nature to that as collusions against exception nature's course. Now we can discern this because it is not just because it is the identity of volume that has the species to share a shared volume science that is individual grouped together, male, female, species, body of volume. Species, body of volume, whether it's positive or negative to the male or female, alpha or omega. If it's really positive to it, it's positive to the species. That's the same. If one part of your body is positive to its identity of itself as an individual part, it is simultaneously positive to your complete identity. It is a semi-nature relationship that way. This is more probably and is simultaneously, increasingly, demonstrably how English was revealed to be taught. vaccines flawed, but this is with and where and how the scientific method values the differences of where and how the sounds have other identities of relationship to themselves at the same time. Same reason we do. Other species, ours, individual group together. Grouped areas, ages, sexes, all kinds of things are in demonstration of the value of discerning how it is greater than and just being an identity of hypersimultaneous that is distinct where and how being an individual is being a simultaneous nature as a species body, as a group body, locations, areas, age, sex, as an individual. Being grouped, that's also a sequence slash simultaneous nature. And being the species body, we only have control of that one way, this way. That we are now systems tactical ulterior from. And where and how we got tactical ulterior from it is reported those causes that are blamed on other things, others ourselves, by the identities of sophistication, using identities of logic that they couldn't get away with, not by accident, relying upon the natures of logic with the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, who would also have the phenomena of, they already recorded, admit this, but we see there is maintenance to where and to how. All formal fact treatment and identity locations. You know, there's a hierarchy of intelligence community, what they call the intelligence community at each country, that gets involved with what they call he said, she said, or with people describing what was said between them, instances between themselves, where and how they know other people's names. And so before our founders were born in America, in Russia, in Ukraine, in China, in Japan, already sustained. The locations that are our modern countries were already forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to value increasingly alliances with relevant where and how employed, or other identities of how we are individual grouped in together, that were tactically and now are tactically the simultaneously the possession slash hyper possession of the human fact treatment, nature, qualities, aspects of nature that can't defend itself and afford the short words of anyone using that nature of truth that is true always, not denying the slightest exception, not valuing exceptions, and using where and how it uses. It is the order of the finite, the value of the order of the finite. It is the order of the finite. It is the finite, smallest finite detail, simultaneously, the hyper simultaneous. For science, too, where we have to agree and be able to discern, this is, the science of the body and the brain is distinct from the science of the mind. And again, it's relevant where and how there's a quality of fact human nature. One of the things the ancients understood, because you could discern it too now, is that time is an increasing identity of value because it is relative where and how there is one identity of space slash existence that is making more of itself where where identity is value is distinct from where and how value by itself is a subject, for example, but it's relevant where and how both identity and value are values by math relative to the parabola, or and as a manifest For example, value of significance, identity of significance, to the mass plural and to the other subjects where they make value treatments of themselves. That left and leaves out how identity works. They left and leaves out how there were database locations. There were databases that were revealed with this republic for which we stand that came from ancient times, before sciences became permanently foreign influenced in semi-ancient times. One of the things that witch trials and slavery is about criminally foreign influenced identity, grounds, locations, uses, where the human fact-keeping nature was enslaved by a fact-keeping nature method designed to keep the only natures of unity and designed to keep the only natures of independence when fighting with each other and or when as unity or not as fake side used to screen itself. The hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise there are needs to discern syntactically, while syntactically there are needs and means to stack. Hyper means stack. Beyond that, which could be syntactically conceived by countries that have been holding nuclear weapons, and needs for such where such could be justified. Because simultaneously, that's where relevant is, thank God, at least where we share having entertained, having been tricked to entertain, having been forced to entertain criminally foreign influenced communications for our country's founders. See, this breaching method knew that they would have to fake it before they could make it with sophistication as who's going to speak for the law and defend that. And it knew they would blame other things, others, or selves. And they would increasingly value that having been done sickly, distinctly to unfathomable extents, and where and how it was sustained. And we have to understand how it was sustained against Native Americans and everyone where it was employing the identities increasingly made other by being told and shown other identities of logic. There are parents that don't have time to go into. They have to have faith in their teachers. See, but we have time treatments always too fast, too slow, with all subjects treatments at all locations. We're employed them to leave out finite details. We're employed them with collusions. So where they have the adults and kids of every age getting involved with other people's names, where and how they have overt criminal enterprises, private ones originally instilled. Those laws that were with colonies, individually grouped in together. Don't forget that there were multiple different countries' names as the human species volume system, now technically ulterior from how we are individually grouped together, voicing for anyway. The only voicings for humanity. One thing they do is that, in other words, so the FBI has roles with psychology and psychiatry. In other words, police forms that have badges, and there are judges with them, and they've been stacking fake things into databases, also as collusion/S with interbranch locations, also relevant where and how exception nature works. The value of truth as it actually unfolded. For example, regarding the relevance of understanding a breaching method was sustained against Native Americans, off the books and even on the books before our founders were born, And on the books now, where our founders are also, their identity are stolen in our faces, overtly slash insidiously. And offensively, people are pretending passions and emotions like they couldn't realize. How that was is motivated, is relevant to what is being and having been seen, entertained. It can't be entertained. And ourselves defended from from uses of fact cheaping possessions of all styles of positive, negative treatments, identity treatments, timing treatments, time treatments. These are all forever nature's course. Nature shows us how better than perfectly used words, subject treatments, predicate treatments, predicate act treatments. See, but so we have to address where the recorded collusions, how they are facilitated with names uses between people in suburbs, sickly distinctly from how in the cities. Even though the suburbs were designed before our founding parents were even born, everyone sickly distinctly a slave. Where and how it counts, where and how we are fact cheaping, quality of fact cheaping nature. How this has gotten away with. We cannot leave out the little tricks with the databases because there are connections between them made for themselves. That's why it's so important, in other words. Also, privacy. This is a method that has adults with sequence shifts. Because everyone wants privacy, but they're lying about how why they believe other people are motivated to speak and to want and to need to be heard. See, but the mandated law is not followed correctly to keep this from being disseminated, to keep it exploited, not just per the known manifest corruption rolls with that. Increasingly individually grouped and together, also bound. And with where and how those theater uses of the words, like America, our modern, how could our country use that without addressing having increasingly evaluated with subject treatment, the breaching method itself. So, thank you. Someone please get them the interbranch have been switching names and forging names. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim. These are ones names also with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and relevant where everyone's been speaking through others. And relevant where we have serious things that have to be treated serious and hard. Like where and how the course of black pupils, whites of eyes became abridged. And where and how hard has been used and finite has been used as collusions to get over on the simultaneous. To go hard, that means we have to use that identity of hard that no one could mimic, that which has all identities of value progression in themselves, individually grouped and together, and demonstration of the identity that binds space slash existence, that which makes more of itself through temporary slash lasting. And it makes more of a special difference to itself, which is relevant where and how. Being further positive or negative is parsed. And so, control your hearts, because math can't teach you this. But math can't teach itself without being able to teach this. See, the languages have not been taught right. Syntax, linguistics have not been taught right. Not because of a plot hatched or plots hatched by the people associated with the treatments of our sciences and subjects, but one already perfected through each perfected use singular, of all identity ground locations. And it knew that everywhere that sciences would be met would become manifest, even if they have homeschooling, the phenomenon of homeschool. Each age and nature of correlation nature is measured and maintained roles, needing to self-value. The real causes of negative identity progression, how we have means to discern this, blame the other things other ourselves, and relevant where and how we have subject treatments the way they are. Exactly the way they need to be to insidiously / overtly in our faces communicate other for Marbury versus Madison and for the Constitution unabridged that it means. Well, this is what I'm saying. If we're going to debate the language and the treatments of the language regarding the amendments to the Constitution, we cannot leave out what is actually recorded, which is that debate has left out the breaching method, where how our founders had to speak language, had to entertain language that were short words that they would not have entertained. They were leaving out the proper way they wanted and needed to use short words. And they're making exceptions, tactical terror from how nature wanted us to communicate for themselves. So I was taught at schools and in life and things that George Washington said that he could tell no lies, and that he did chop down a cherry tree, and that he did not. And he did to come to Connecticut, which no CT, same initials as cherry tree. And he did chop down that which he had to leave entrenched with slavery. North colonies and South colonies as possessions criminally foreign influenced of colonies themselves, of colonizing countries themselves, used remotely from some ancient times. There are even archaeological evidences that are more probable and practical than how the religious books are demonstrating. We're not even supposed to call it a devil only, or a devil, or a jinn, because in other words, that's not something to be counted. In other words, we're supposed to refer to it as a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. We're supposed to appreciate where and how the sciences are being and having been abridged, and where and how this can be used to discern the identity demonstrating itself. Also with the possession, with its possession of Earth's a special difference, additionally, from our own, now our own possession / S. I manifest, I tell best vaccines. So there are all natures of people involved with journalism, all natures of interbranch evidence reception, data reception, identity reception. We are an identity of value / value progression. They're all formal roles with databases and with, protocols and stiff things like that. All that is being and having been employed, primarily for an influence, tactically delusions raw. So it is necessary to counter, not leaving out, not other names involved when we have instances, including the ones with the interbranch locations that have been stated. Roles, needs, and natures incapable of defending themselves and affording the short words proper and or on time, where and how instances and identity ground locations uses are really what I want. One of the things, some of the things that are being brought before them, that are constantly what are being brought before them, but we're not looking at, we're not using and discerning where and how nature uses what is constant and or what is variable and or what is coefficient and or hypercoefficient. And this is relevant where one identity of volume is demonstrably making more of itself, and is demonstrably the possession distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper-simultaneously, as while of the order of the finite, as while of the order that is so powerful that it has all space nature individually grouped in together by a system that we could not change, or without forcing Earth's special difference from here as an identity of negative identity of relationship to itself. Lethal IDs, force-based nature transfers more probably how the ancients would teach that and reveal. Lethal IDs is a phrase that was demonstrably also the possession of sciences that were appreciating the means we have inherent, active, and progressive to answer our questions, like how and why we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and exceptions in exception nature. To know and to show where how names, treatments, the good ones and the bad ones within American history, and the difference is being and having been self-valued, how being and having been employed as means, as a tool, by a breaching method distinctly but from our own, but through our own, through other motivations, nature, needs, interests to measure and maintain. That and how people aren't using sure words properly. Because then it won't align with the illusions wherein how overt criminal enterprises, plural, private ones, and the interbranch and exceptions and exception nature tied to them, and insidiousness of people A through Z, wherein how all you have heard, other people have heard, have involved for the furtherance of illusions, like Americans experiment. And America's not experiment. America is not won the American Revolution because it has not, it lost intellectual and it lost identity integrity. And valued mean tricks, little magic tricks to get away with pretending other. So relevant to where and to how all time treatments, formal and informal, voiced by all, formal and informal, fact-checking nature. They are inherent, active, and progressive with hyper-evidentially recorded proofs of this relevance, where and how we need to have examined what I've been asking you to bring up. See, Connecticut networks, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, have roles with uses of words like privacy and truths, where they make that truth for life. Everyone could tell, everyone could say, oh, I'm telling the truth, I want privacy, that's my motivation. See, but really their motivations are relevant to where and to how they had kids use other people's names with other kids. When they had roles with fact, human nature oriented predicate acts simultaneously with that. Very distinct natures of organized crime, private, uncharged but recorded predicate acts methods. And these are fact human, especially where and how we are quality as fact human nature. So this is the whole truth, nothing but the truth. You could accept this as a affidavit. Connecticut Interbranch has roles with names on off Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and Weathersfield through time, on off campuses involved with sequence shifts, planting fake, magic tricks, illusions, natures of identity, theft, fraud, slander, also relevant. Because that's one of the things that the breaching method knew that nature would that demonstrated itself as, where and how a breaching method is increasingly demonstrated, where and how questions regarding What were witch trials about? What was slavery about? What is Marbury versus Madison about? What is the appearance of justice about? See, we have criminal insidiousness takes on that and magic rules with little magic tricks. So a whole bunch of people tied to so then they make us use the names. A whole bunch of people recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Also, there's to the people that use my name in the past, involved with databases I don't know at all. And they try to pretend other by approaching me at corners of buildings. And they have ties between themselves. A whole bunch of people tied to Taekwondo places, and I don't know their names, the places along the South End Highway with the intelligence community. They haven't made fake exceptions pretending to know me. And where others are for everyone, putting fake, attaching everyone to fake words, fabricating audio and video transcripts to replace what's actually recorded, where and how relevant is remote uses of the president individual voice, no matter if they're Democrat or Republican, sickly distinctly too, though. So it doesn't matter. But then, that difference too is being and having been effectively employed. Self-value, criminally foreign influence exploited at other locations, at where it's by the common method that everyone's a victim of. One of the things manifest that are common is people's with our treatments of and the relevance of motivations. So the breaching method knew that its roles with motivation as an answer. Is an answer inseparable from all kinds of questions. What are witch trials about? Even if they were completely made up, there it was about that breaching method too. Ugh. It employed the identity that Native Americans claimed to be after the breaching method had already been sustained against them and are already replaced, and take what they took away. The short words and memory of identity that was revealed by nature directing the sciences before they became criminally foreign influence in some ancient times as they control our minds. So one of the reasons we are supposed to, but simultaneously not supposed to call it a devil or shaitan is because we're supposed to call it a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise and or an identity of negative value nature progression, effectively being and having been self-valued, where and how it is a method that exploits where and how identity is an identity of value/value progression, where and how it is memory, where and how it is experience, where and how it uses the value of sequence, what really came first, and the significance of finite details, where really are the motivations behind people. So investigators, and all perception of that, all vetting of perception itself is effectively being and having been exploited, relevant to where and to how known, quote, known, unquote, and how really unknown our on-off campuses manifest conjunction/S with a whole bunch of different countries. Ones that fight with each other, where and how increasingly peace is necessary. This has only been allowed to be through collusion/S with psychology, psychiatry, and its colonial predecessors, and roles with uses of the names like Joseph Mengele, uses of names like science, uses of their family members, sense and sensibilities. See, everyone wants to fight about passions and emotions, leaving out what really came true, what's really why and how. People can't solve things with fact treatments. So increasingly value is how the suburbs from here across the globe were tactically denatured before our founders were even born. And increasingly valuable to discern this is the breaching method they asked they communicated for us to demonstrate had been involved with the slavery of everyone sickly distinctly and had been exploiting everyone, blaming other things, others, or selves for where and how that was only capable of, as the breaching method effectively knew it would, cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures itself that they had to counter as fact human nature. It knew effectively, correctly, that everyone would blame it on other things, others, or ourselves, while increasingly self-valuing that only having been remembered having been since some ancient times. So increasingly, all change in appearances of evolution have been the complete possession slash hyper-possession of an as identities of logic that are the complete possession of breaching methods, identity of logic method. So the colonialism came with a breaching method singular that was effectively a breaching method slash S, where the only part that was discerned by anyone or that would be addressed by anyone who were capable was the no, there would be exceptions they knew would be, but people that couldn't afford defending their logic roles and nature roles within. So if you have nature, even if you're, they would sickly distinctly affect the array of people that they would make a fake side. And or when there are real differences, then make those real differences employed to other meanings. See, what makes computers, the phenomena of computers, be able to do things and work is how it's using memory of identity of relationship to itself, and where it is only hyper-additional. But computers are like worship of a hyper-additionalism that leaves out how exceptions and exception nature works, where and how the hyper invisible but still discernible works. It is still discernible because it is an identity as itself, so as self-possession of the order, as the value of truth before the order of the finite now, smallest finite detail now is America. Before this, a breaching method was entrenched. After a while, counters to it were grounded and given an extent of stability by our founders. That was never liberated to be grounded for the Constitution unabridged. Pantheism is more probably and is demonstrably more practically and increasingly discernibly having been about why and how we can't use isms as a definition, and where and how prayer is one of the words that they criminally for and influenced to measure and maintain anyone not valuing criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments as collusion slash S with criminal insidiousness natures of overt slash insidious negative treatments and again, of identity treatments increasingly. So, one of the things that is sickly distinctly against every single American, every single person of every modern country, and of our founders, even, is an identity theft slash fraud slash slander method. Because there are three bound identities of relativity to itself that the identity of identity has that is being mimicked. And again, through our home, everywhere the species body is, forgiveness is not to give up, forgiveness is to blame the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise and see what can, why. And even that, not just to see what can and counter, to see what can, the legitimate reasons for no one could trust each other, or when they try to trust each other, it's through it makes everyone not be, shouldn't trust each other. In other words, it's evidence. There are revelations that come from where and how since before our fathers were born, before cars were invented, let alone trains. I mean, cranes, pickup trucks, bulldozers. And when we were in the suburbs, tactically denatured, still against Native Americans, still was sustained against Native Americans, against colonists, and everyone forced roles with it. Those sick, distinct slavery laws against our founders. We have to understand is the fact human nature slavery of our founders. We have to understand we have to discern distinctly they made where the color thing hurt people sickly distinctly, they made the arrays of it too, and played to keep how nature uses and was demonstrating uses of that, blamed all the things others of keep illusions, time to locations. So the people of New York City and of Hartford, Connecticut, and of the neighboring suburbs and nations, we want and need to counter pseudoscience itself, and not to counter who disbelieves, but their logic. And this needs us, for example, the January 6th Commission is involved with a method that brings things before courts or before police forms, knowing that they're going to leave out finite details and they're going to make things up. And then they're going to pretend they can't remember in the past. Where and how a breaching method made and makes effectively never relinquished uses of summaries of the substance of what the law says to say that they have the right to lie. The identity of the law individually grouped it together because they were employed individually grouped it together with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiousness of people A through Z. Or to have that effectively uses of short words and truths and the nature of truth properly sensed and discerned. And that person has to change words, faked words, and with everyone around themselves. And that alone causes other worse things. And it's a method of relevant where and how. Sources and methods, for example, is a phrase that underlings and that leaders of the intelligence agencies that they had and have roles, for example, on and off the spots next to the state capitol, with roles all along roads and routes, with where and how the identity theft slash fraud slash slander methods sickly distinctly. They have individuals with more fact human nature predicate acts against more individuals and against single individuals and their families than there are streets in our cities, as the individuals also involved with KKK themed and with black themed hate groups also relevant where and how everyone speaking through others is forced, tricked, or persuaded, and where and how relevant are uses of exceptions in exception nature, critically for influence. Leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since, in that context and since, a whole bunch of people with Central Connecticut State University have roles and had roles with parks and recreation, and with the parks, those locations where they have the identities of the interbranch and the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, juxtapose planting evidences of locations and on and off campuses and on and off database locations. See, but this, the motivations for this are being motivated by what really came before. Then there is complete remote possession of everyone. Again, the way they adjust that person, fake words, change words, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. So there's a Joshua Julian and there's a Joshua Stryker. As two people I don't know who pretended other behind my back, who had their names repeated to me by people involved with predicate acts on and off where I live now, who also, where I grew up, mostly in, all except the other places I live, they involved that with fact-sheet nature. Predicate acts and uses of names at that location to the people involved with it, relevant where and how they're using the sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, of humanity, but which is also relevant where to is that breaching method, because it's not just through England, it was not just through the other Spain and France, and know how France allied with us to enable the phenomenon of our founders and our real founders and the Native Americans to couple their incompatible volumes to an extent of semi-counter extortion and damage control against the human fact, human nature slavery system. So WFSB recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that they have roles with the intelligence community next to their location, involved also with wire crime acts and methods they have with their phones, relevant to where and how they attach me to fake conversations with the Roger Suzanne, fake communications with Roger Suzanne and with others. And they attached my family to fake conversations with others. They lied about legal cases. They have a police chief, Simtron, and 1 or more years ago, I don't know the names of them, associated with the same house, involved with their families, extended families, and intimate ties. Also, where and how there are fact, human nature, predicate acts, methods relevant, whole methods of them, involved with the names with the various courts. New Britain courts and Hartford courts had roles with West Hartford locations and parks where they were, how they plant evidences at locations. With kids who had roles with this when I was a kid, like a whole bunch of people tied with Joseph Dennis and his brother, and involved with neighbors of his, like a former Mayor Gold and his family. I keep getting, since I was a kid, a whole bunch of confessions tied to them, and with relevant stacked predicate acts. And so this makes people, no one wants to speak with someone about organized crime, about predicate acts, about criminal insidiousness. And this is also where and how kids don't know these phrases, but I needed those phrases when I was a kid. I didn't even need to continue to explain it anyway. It's an identity theft / fraud / slander method. But when we start explaining it, because it was motivated by other people, see, this is a method that maintaining every use is criminally for influence. Everyone speaking through others, and then you're going to leave out details for all kinds of good reasons, bad reasons, mixed. The good reasons and the bad reasons are employed as criminal insidious natures of positive and negative treatment that simultaneously are relevant where and how fathomed acceptable were treatments of our kids, where and how we have forced education, but they're not educating them. They're sabotaging the education, and they're valuing having been planted excuses to pretend other motivations too. No. Now they have the FBI recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also involved with Fox Connecticut News, also with state police and other police forms on all Fox Connecticut News and the buildings next to them have roles with all kinds of states programs, people on off the state capitol involved with identity theft, fraud, slander instances. These are people that have people walk next to others and they take a picture so they can pretend that they think the person's a liar if they say they don't know them. I don't know Chuck Hasper and Mike Daly. A whole bunch of people, and there are fake exceptions of me knowing people trying to pretend I know them tied to that spot through time. They make fake exceptions. There's Maria Vazino, a whole bunch of people tied to the spots next to the state capitol involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, instances that are connected. That also shows criminally foreign influence uses of databases at campuses and a private one simultaneously. And as people involved with overt criminal enterprises, time, criminally foreign influence uses of corners of streets, all along roads and routes, and roles with criminally foreign influence. So Central Connecticut State University has roles with the FBI where they have reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, more than they realize, but what they want to admit. So they have self-value rights and directions for them to lie to defend their integrity. And the motivations for that, they're lying about that too. And with tactical delusions relevant with their logic. So a whole bunch of people from my grammar school that were involved with predicate acts that I didn't have classes with, their names keep being brought up. They kept being brought up with confessions to me. There's a Rob Rodriguez who 3 times they've tried to make it look like I knew him. And the 2 other times, the last 2 times, one time he was walking with a girl, then said next time he goes, oh, I know that he yells out, oh, you know that girl, she was dead. I didn't get involved with the conversation because I knew he was being used to plant evidences. Because there are people involved with him with wire crimes, with the police forms and courts in the past, from other parts of Wethersfield and other cities that are involved on my street through time and in streets near me. And this is where and how they use everyone's names. They force us to use other people's names or to shut up and let they're all fake. Whole bunch of ties to Fred Grisette. I don't think I ever saw him around my neighbors. These are people that sought me out from other parts of Wethersfield on my street time, where they needed to hide lie progression. So they need to make us look like we're all friends, knew each other. And they're putting people locked where they can't go back and be honest about the past, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, and with how they have their kids and their extended family members, as the names evolve with the men as men and women who are involved that can't afford from backgrounds with the interbranch. So the people around us in the interbranch, as the ones involved with overt criminal enterprises, plural private ones, and insidiousness of people A through Z, they're involved with self-valuing interbranch switching names and forging names with all kinds of fast stacking predicate act solutions into interbranch databases. Fabricated audio and video consciously criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that give the benefit of the doubt to people based on their job or title at the last moment at interbranch locations. So that's involved with them recorded consciously with a Peruta families, one of the Russian families, involved on off Hartford Hospital with a whole bunch of Asian families, people from Italy, people from involved with identity thefts and frauds together on off courts, interbranch locations and campuses. A whole bunch of people, the Lombardo family, I never had communications with, never had a word of communication with them. Pretended I had communications with them on off medical locations and campuses, on off job sites, and with people from that are involved on off campuses, with the names on my street, further involved with the principal child offender, pretending passions and emotions, even when that's real. I'm asking you, they're trying to pretend they want privacy. Then put it on paper. Therefore, they have a Bob Chase involved with Phil Colloa involved with his confessions and demonstrations. These are people who have been speaking fake things, using their databases with forensics locations and with various courts involved in a whole bunch of names tied to predicate acts on and off my street since I was a kid. Same ones on and off campuses behind my back. They made out fake narratives when they're calling people liars or telling the truth and everything like that. They already painted themselves as the records, criminally foreign influence. Everyone step back because you're all victim predators yourselves. All we have to do is follow mandated law. I only need the confessions of the principal child offender and the fake emails and the fake communications and the names that brought up, but I gotten onto paper. And I want a response, I need a response from the school, because they've been using the schools to hide lie progressions from their roles with names involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. They're demonstrating a whole bunch of people with a violent family involved on and off the extended family member of a former of a police chief Centron with a Mazzucato bakery in Hartford and Weathersfield, involved with a whole bunch of people told lies to me, brought a modern pastry involved with this, and people on and off that live near Paul Kelly, involved with military, involved with identity thefts and frauds of strangers, fake conversations with people hiding, basically mixing fake responses to people, and that ain't response. No, and that's men and women that have they abused women when they were kids. Now they have them as adults with their little kids on and off the campuses with the news media, with the intelligence community as the criminally foreign influenced people, involved with Del Farrell's also with judges and prosecutors and with the name Spada. A whole bunch of people with the name of the Collo family kept bringing up your name, Spada, years ago. And then you brought up years ago, last time I saw you, we brought up one of those times with you brought up Fred Brzee. Fred Brzee was reported confessed demonstration. I didn't mean to get your mother in trouble or something like that. Whatever you had to hide with that. See, that's how they did that. So, spotted there were more people with the school. There's also a hiking bar. I never had a personal conversation, not a word. But how they ever, we never had we were like a word until one a couple times. Not even. These are people involved. The coaches use the sense and sensibilities of everyone involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, where how they have wire crime acts, mail crime. They have something, a whole bunch of ties to the Elm Streets and Weathersfield and Rocky Hill, with names involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, and all exception nature that appear to be a demonstration of other and demonstration of the same thing too. And their roles with predicate acts on my street with that on and off campuses through time relevant. As the names involved on and off campuses with child abuses, with criminally foreign influence uses of elections locations. Weathersfield town offices also have people, of course they want to pretend they need privacy. Let's get them onto paper. They have a whole bunch of people in the British Superior Court also involved with Mendez, people with the name Mendez. Reported that Eric Mendez and his brother uses different names done off the Weathersfield Police Department, involved with various narratives and confessions regarding different police reports. And they put fake things, charges with fake information, fake communications with people since they were kids. So when they were kids, they were involved with kids that had communications with the police that attach others to fake communications with the kids bring up subjects involved with organized crime around me, and those are the people involved with it. And then they call the police to try to. They have the people that call the police involved with predicate acts methods, various relative falsified police reports, where and how they interbranch in the private tie to them, like the news media. The news media also has educational roles with each age of fact treatment nature, where they have roles where relevant are their conscious uses of overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Now also Hartford Hospital has rolls with a whole bunch of names next to its hospital through time involved with relative identity theft, fraud, slanders instances. And then when they pretend passions and emotions, when they, oh, we're just responding to things we heard you say on social media. They have the people in the reality television shows saying that because they have that employed, but they have their roles with the three branches of government, assassination tied to them. Whole bunch of other countries on and off campuses involved with the switching names, forging names, and the demonstrations. Whereas the people that are forging names, switching names on falsified police reports, and you have no writing to respond to. And if you respond to that, you have to respond to the other confessions and the other narratives with the switching of officers' names. You have to write all these things. And they pretend not to understand, where they already pretended fake conversations with me where I used the right to remain silent. Where any exception I made nature that was there, they criminally exploited that too. You know, switching names, sequences. These are people also involved on off the Ninth Circuit Court right before the World Trade Center attack, leading up to it and in it. Proven after the World Trade Center attack, post-dated documents have been presented to the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center right before the attack. There were people leading up to it in the attack context and since that were involved with relevant predicate acts in the past, also with their extended family members. There's a Spada family. I mean, there was a Scalora family. There's a whole bunch of people tied to a Spada family that have ties to Knott Street who are involved with identity thefts and frauds against me. And with his people on Valley Press, further with his people on the child abuser registry. Even if it was made up, they're involved. I caught them involved with predicate acts with kids. And with social media, with Interbranch Facebook page, involved with child offenders, and then pretending passions and emotions regarding what people say online. Here! Just get them onto paper. I shouldn't have to beg you guys. Make sure they get onto campus with paper with the FBI, because there's an Ian involved also. And they have a whole bunch of ties and people involved with Middletown, involved with federal crimes, with the forensics locations, and with the intelligence community on off Central Connecticut State University through time as the ones inter-campuses, intercities, on off campuses with the little magic tricks with the databases. I figured out what they're doing. They have it next to other campuses in Wethersfield too. And they have judges, I don't know the names of yet, involved with forensics locations in Middletown, further involved with the Bob Chase. And with the names next to campuses involved with identity theft, frauds, wire crime, mail crime, slanders. Let's get them on paper. Let's get them on. Let's go. Long time, New York. You're not going to wait for fake science to pretend it's just an opinion when you say that science has not spoke for you. The suburbs have not been spoken for honestly, let alone. Speak or whisper creek. Get them onto paper now. Box 6, fake branches, bar, then gently fall. The wall. Who disbelieves?